Welcome to the third season of Heard Afros and Audio interview series. Today, my guest is Richard Seneque. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. It's good to talk to you. As I mentioned, man, audio drama is at the heart of everything I do, and even the cornerstone of Afros and Audio. So the fact that I am speaking to someone who is in that world as well right now makes me super happy, and I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, me too. This is an amazing opportunity, and I'm excited to see where this goes.
All right, cool. So let's jump in. What inspired you to create Visionaries Audio Dramas, and how did you decide on fantasy as the genres for your storytelling?
There's a whole kind of backstory with Visionary. So, truthfully, this is the first time I came into the audio drama world. Before then, I was writing exclusively for screen, be it TV or film. I had this idea about Visionaries that I first approached as a TV series, and just being realistic with myself, I was like, man, there's no way. I've done independent films, short films, and such, but I was like, there's no way I can capture this world on film and get it to whatever network to like put it out there. It just seemed like way too much of a long shot. So I was like, all right, what way can I take this same concept and not have to compromise and still put it out there? Then I stumbled upon audio dramas. So a buddy of mine was like, you should make it into an audio drama. So I started listening to a few, and I was like, man, I could see this. If done correctly, I can still, in fact, I can even go further. Because when I was trying to think I would do a web series, I was like, can't afford that, can't do that. Don't have the funding to get this kind of sound, not even sound effects, just visual effects. Hearing a few and seeing how I was like transported, you can really feel like you're in the world that creator put out there on the audio. It just made me feel like, all right, cool. Let me try to transition and create this audio drama through all the steps from rewriting the script, because I couldn't just take what I wrote for TV and plug it into audio. It's a whole different space, has its own rules, which I had to learn the hard way. You got to respect it. Because at first I did think I can just cram it in there. And then I learned, like, nah, that's not going to work. Writing the season, testing it out with the table read, getting a good feel for it, and the response that I've received from the first season, I was like, okay, yeah, everyone is going with the flow and they're enjoying the story. Let's see if we can continue going further. So it was a blessing. Honestly, I didn't even know it was going to be, because I think even I had to experience it to see how much you can do with sound and how
Mm.
powerful it is, and how quickly you can tap into your listener's imagination and paint that same picture without having visual aids.
Yeah, man, I love everything you said, and I appreciate it so much because you are bringing those transferable skills. You're in that world already of imagining a world for the viewer or the listener already. Because let's face it, while people are viewing, they're also listening. So
Absolutely.
it's all a thing. But and to have discovered audio dramas in the way that you did, someone saying you should try it and you being willing to try it is the first thing. So congratulations and much
Appreciate it.
respect for your willingness to try it out. And then also learning as a person who has adapted comic books into audio drama, television into audio drama. No, you cannot just adapt. You can't just throw the script in
No,
there.
you cannot.
Yeah,
I'll
highly
save
dialogue
you some
driven.
time.
Yes,
Don't do it.
yes, it's highly dialogue driven and sound design, right?
Yeah,
That's how the story comes across. And for you to do that, move in that direction, create something that you're proud of, because that's what I heard. Folks listening to it and saying, yeah, you did this. You
yeah,
handle business here.
I appreciate
That's
it.
important, man. That's important. So I really respect that. What else about audio dramas did you feel like you learned? I'm sure you learned a whole lot, but
Yeah.
what kind of things came up for you when you were moving from the visual world into the audio world where you're like, yeah, I'm going to have to move differently here?
So one of the biggest things I've learned, and it was even throughout the course of the first season, producing the second season, was, man, I can really go forward. I can really extend. Because I think even when I approached it with the first season, I made it fit the rules and audio drama, but I don't think my thinking matched that same thing. I think I was still being a bit reserved. And it wasn't until after the first season and like getting back to the drawing board to write the second season, and just, man, if I wanted to have a dragon, I can do that. Yeah, I don't have a dragon, but if I wanted to, I can do that. And then it was this freedom that I think if I were in a position where it was picked up for something and it was TV, like all those things are very costly. When here, you can do so much if you have the sound at the right moment and trigger those responses or emotions from your listener. So I think the biggest thing I've learned was the freedom that I've never felt in anything I've written before. Everything
Mm,
I've had to produce independently, there was always the idea of, all right, if I'm writing in this location, do I have access to said location? Like, how will it fit in the budget when we're scouting for locations? And this just it really made me appreciate the creative and artistic freedom one has. And what better freedom to have when you're writing a fantasy series.
yeah.
So I think I've underestimated and I've learned to appreciate the power of sound.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome, man. Your audio debut was in 2020, and you've already received multiple awards and recognition. How has this rapid success shaped your approach to podcasting?
I think just again to piggyback, the first season was this limited kind of, I'm new here. I don't know if
Mm,
people are actually gonna like it. I don't know if they're just gonna think this is just some dude with his weird out whatever thoughts. But seeing the response to it, that's what gave me the encouragement to, like, don't hold back, go all the way, push yourself, really just dive into it. So obviously getting the positive feedback and accolades and recognition from the first season definitely put a battery in my back and say, all right, how can I go further? What can I do to make it different? And it's been such a rewarding, fulfilling experience because it's so hard to explain, but I guess I've always had to deal with the constraints of, okay, this is a cool idea, but where are you going to shoot it? Or where this is going to happen? And now just being able to get a recording booth, get the studio and get my actors in there, and that's all I need. That's by far been the most rewarding thing that I've learned. And even till today, as I'm writing season 3, just the idea of what can you do, take it further? How can you push the envelope?
yeah, yeah, it's so important. It does provide this liberation, this freedom as a creator that other things, and that's to me one of the golden aspects of podcasting is that you can do whatever you want, and the sound is there. And if the sound isn't there, you can make it. You
You
know?
literally can.
Yeah, and so there is this liberation aspect of it, and I love that because all creators should be liberated in
I
whatever way.
agree. It's a
Yes,
beautiful feeling, and it
yeah,
took this amount of time for me to finally feel like that. Of all the things I've written or directed or produced, it was this project that made me feel like, okay, cool, yeah. Like, I don't, whatever idea I have in my head, the only way it doesn't go through is if it doesn't work. But there's
mm,
no idea that I would like, oh, that's too crazy, I can't do that. So it's been a very fulfilling experience.
nice, man. I love that for you. I really do. As a writer, producer, and director, how do you balance these roles to bring your vision to life?
My approach is, I'm a big believer in small victories, one step at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself. So you can't have the good podcast without the good actors. You can't have the good actors without the good story. So I've taken this thing of, I don't do anything until I'm at a point with the writing where I'm ready to share. And I only share it where I know I won't feel like an idiot. That is what's helped me. Once you get the writing done, whether I'm, in the case of season 2, a lot of my cast came back, but there were new character roles that I had to hold auditions for and such. And I rehearse with my actors. So once we've done our rehearsals and we've read through it all and it sounds good, then we get in the studio. Depending on the stages where I put on a different hat, from the writing to the directing to the editing and layering on sound design. That's what's
Mm,
helped me not, because it's a lot when you put it all in a vacuum. But I think
yeah,
when you can just separate it and just one step at a time, it allowed me to focus on that one step and give it my 100% all and not
yeah.
feel like I'm spreading myself too thin.
Wow. Okay. And I can imagine, but definitely correct me, you having these experiences previously in doing television, short films, that sort of thing, you brought already some competent skill sets to the
Oh,
table, right?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm curious because I know from mine, I've been a writer all my life, but I had never directed, produced a thing. And I was afraid to direct. I was afraid, not afraid, but just wasn't confident in that.
Yeah.
And so you already having experiences, knowing the audio is different and it was your first time. I'm just curious to know how you approached it.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense because I had those same doubts and fears at first. Up until that moment, I've never done an audio drama. I've only known how to write in screenplay format. I didn't know if my writing format would look weird when I'm trying to put it out for actors. I didn't know how do I do my call sheets. Like, I just knew what I knew from when I directed films. So I'd say I took what I knew and I used that and made it work for the audio drama, if that makes any sense. So when I produced my last short, where we were like rehearsing blocking, yeah, sure, that's not in it because it's all audio, but I'm still rehearsing with these actors. So I think for me, it wasn't that much of a difference because the same thing kind of applied. I have to get the actors ready, make sure we're all on the same page because they all make great choices, but it's about the choice that fits with the mold of the story. And me being the writer, I know where the story starts and how it ends. So I think what can seem like a good choice now may not make sense a few seasons down the line. So it's just really guiding the actors to where they need to be and being detailed, organized, and hitting that checklist and trying to get everything off. But I think that would be my advice. The more organized you are, the better it is because what I've learned even when I was in film school is when you're on set, something's going to go wrong. Completely out of your control. Someone running late, a family emergency, something goes bad. So my whole thinking is I'm going in trying to make sure whatever situation, whatever surprise that comes my way, I'm in the best position to handle it. That is what kind of allowed me to go to this new terrain and just be able to, all right, head down, let's keep it moving forward.
Yeah, that's dope, man. And I have not listened, but I'm going to. I'm excited about it.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, and it's something about you that tells me that you want it done in excellence.
I'm not gonna lie, I strive.
Yes.
I'm all about setting a tone, and I'm really happy. Major shout out to my cast because we're all in lockstep. And I think there's this kind of feeling of we all wanted to do the best we can. So there isn't any like weak links, not weak in talent, but expectations. All right, we got to show up. We got to be prepared. We got to know what the character is doing in the scene. We all hold each other to a standard. So I dig it.
Yeah, it's important. It's an opportunity, right? These are actors. This is voice acting. This
Yeah.
is a chance to be heard and to build that portfolio. It's the same with this work. We have people in our community, Yanni Washington. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
Oh yeah,
her.
yeah. I know her.
Yeah. And so getting her work option for television, that sort of thing, it becomes the space where, as you mentioned, first started this conversation, web series is a thing, sure, TV pilots, all this sort of thing. But in the meantime, in between time, the world wants to know that you are still creating and that you're building a portfolio. When it's time to step up to the next opportunity, what you've been doing.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
you
saying?
better be ready. Exactly. And
Yeah.
I always tell people, especially like younger creators that reach out and ask advice, and I'm like, A, you got to put something out. You got to do something. And the question, no matter what you've done, it's always been, where are you doing? And got to keep the ball rolling.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, fantasy storytelling, for anybody out there who is considering that in this moment, it often requires a very intricate world building. So,
Yes.
what's your process for creating immersive and believable worlds in an audio form?
A lot of it draws some inspiration. Like there's a lot of shows I've watched, books I've read. So I encourage artists, like, it is fine to get inspiration from other things. Please look into it. Watch or read or listen to things that's similar to what you're trying to do. And my rule, and I think it's just a standard rule for any type of storytelling, but especially with world building, is I'm here to entertain you with this story. Anyone can come up with a story. I listen to stories when I go to a bar and someone's telling me what happened to them at work, but I'm trying to keep you entertained for the set amount of time. What are the events that happen? And with audio, not having the visual aids, it was jarring at first because I'm like, man, I have to put everything in dialogue from how they're feeling to what's happening. Even if it's not said, based on how they're reading that line, has to indicate their inner monologue and what they really mean to say. But having to deal with that kind of made me look at every little scene, every character that's involved, and what do they do to help bring that world more to life. I think the answer to world building, you need to be structured for sure. I know there are writers who outline, I know some writers who don't outline, and that's totally fine. But in this case, where you're creating rules, I believe it's super important. Once the audience stops believing, is if your world doesn't check out. So anyone who's willing to listen to episode one is willing to buy in, but it is up to you to maintain that bar and not establish one particular rule and then all of a sudden it vanishes 3, 4 episodes down the line. So really structure it out, especially in audio, but I think in most stories, let us live through your characters. Let us experience with your characters and help it define the world.
Absolutely. What's some feedback from listeners that has been the most meaningful to you, and how does it inform your storytelling, if at all?
The most meaningful was this world is filled with history. I feel like it's been lived in. I feel like I'm there. I feel like I'm in the room. That has been the most encouraging form of reviews because that's what I wanted. Regardless if you like this choice of sound design or if you like the voice actors who are in it, I want you to feel like you're in it for that amount of time you're listening to an episode. So it's just them feeling like not only they're in the world, but there's history to this world. It's not just boom, here we are, and this is where it started. So that's been very rewarding.
Yeah, they've been affirming your movements.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great, man. You've highlighted the power of sound and igniting the listener's imagination, and what we're talking about right now. What advice would you give to creators looking to harness sound effectively in their work?
I would say that what's helped me is when I'm using sound, like even when I'm writing the script to share with actors before we get in the recording studio, I put what sound effect I think is going to be there. But a lot of times they'll make it, or I'll change it, or I'll add more to it, and that's because it's the performances that's dictating. Wait, I don't want him to pick up that cup right now. Or when he says this line, I want him to slam this cup down to just give more to the character and what they're feeling. So I think back with the one hand washes the other. You can have your idea of what sound you want to put in, and you should have an idea of what sound you want to put in. But definitely, I think the sound is there to heighten these characters and what's happening in that particular scene. So I would say listen to the audio you have where you recorded and let that dictate because there were a lot of things where I was like, I need something to happen here. I need them to pace back and forth as they're revealing some deep secret to this other character to just showcase that nervousness and not being able to like just be still. So that's been my approach and it's almost been for me what I would do if I was doing a film and blocking the scene. I feel like I'm blocking it through sound. I can add walking. That's no different than if I was directing actors and I tell them, I want you to come here, here's your mark, and deliver this line on this mark. So that's how I looked at sound, as if I'm blocking the scene in real life, in real time, pardon me.
Are you a less is more or the more the better sound designer?
I am a less is more because I feel like my focus is on wanting to showcase the voice actors. Now, to be fair, I'm biased. Before I got into writing for film, I went to conservatories for acting. I went to be a full fledged actor. So I can totally understand me being biased. That's what I was training for a big portion of my life. Ultimately, I think people are there to hear these voice actors deliver these lines, not the sound effects. Sound effects is still just as important, but ultimately they want to hear the story. So I'm less is more. I try to only use sound effects when I feel like it's instrumental to the story or if it supplements it in a way. But if I don't need it and if the performance is so captivating on its own, I probably would lean back and let that ride on its own.
Nice, man. And do you do all the work? Are you doing the writing and the sound design,
Yes.
producing? Got you. I do too, so I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to release it, but no. How do you ensure your audio dramas stand out in a competitive landscape, particularly within the fantasy genre?
I think for me, It's about, again, going to what I was saying before about taking it one step at a time and doing that step 100%. So, to what is my 100% at the moment? So, I'm not setting the script out until I feel it's ready. I'm not
Mhm.
casting any actors that I don't think will fit that role. We're not getting into the studio until we've done enough rehearsals and where I feel, all right, cool, we're ready to get in the studio. Because also, time is money, as you can imagine. It's all those little things and treating each aspect of the whole project as vital and important. And
Mhm.
like, even when I'm casting my actors, it's not enough of, oh, can you say that line? But I need you with your voice to fill in this room and transport people there. That's how I try to view it and just try to be on top of everything. Where, again, even me doing that doesn't guarantee you'll like my choice of actors or you'll like my writing or you'll like my choice of sound design. But raising the bar high for myself and trying to do everything at the most professional level, make ensuring that the studio I'm renting out for the duration of production, it's a top quality studio where I know the audio will be clean. And when I get to editing, I'm not trying to like tweak and fix your voice. I'm just putting the pieces together because all sounds clean. It all sounds good. So that's the way I look at it because it is competitive and you
Yeah.
do have to stand out. And one of the great thing about podcasts is you can turn this interview into a podcast and say this is episode one. Like, it's accessible, but that's the thing. It also makes it very competitive. So I think just really trying to accomplish each step and make sure you've done the best you can.
Yeah, man. I'm very much intrigued by your process and again your approach based on your experience. And so as I'm listening to you, I'm like, it's probably a serious, and you might not see it this way, but a real masterclass of being in the room and then being in your post production just to see how you navigate the audio and the final product in itself.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's exciting. I love that.
Thank you. I really
Exciting.
appreciate it. The first short film I ever did was a disaster. I'm proud that I did it. It was experience, but boy, did I learn. And I remember telling myself, I never want to be in that position again.
Mhm, mhm,
And a lot of the issues that came from that production were things that I didn't do. It wasn't me actively, purposely trying to self sabotage. It just wasn't following through. Not getting all the shots we need made me had to do pickup days, and me having to do pickup days had to account for the actor who was out of the country for a few months. So that get pushed back. That getting pushed back means you just lose momentum and one thing trickles to the next. So that's what I mean, where like carrying everything through, because the worst thing I think for any kind of production is this was an issue from pre-production and now it's an issue in post, and more than likely is going to be an issue all throughout. You want to try to minimize that as much as you can because life happens. Even on this second season, when we recorded, I had one actor get very sick where he couldn't come the day he was supposed to, and another actor caught COVID, so he just couldn't come back. My actors are part of the SAG after union, so they're really on top of these things where I would have to report it. I wouldn't just be able to go around it. And oh, cool, this person has COVID, and we're in a small booth with everyone else. Also, it wouldn't be fair to all the other people who are there too. So, like, scenarios like that, I remember with one of the actors, I had to ask another actor to come in and read the lines, not as like the new performer, but just as someone for the other actor to work off of. And then the other actor, I had to come in and read all the lines. And then when you put it together, you don't know, like, it was me reading off of him, obviously, but still, it's just little things like that completely out of my control. But the fact that we have had rehearsals, the fact that we knew the script from top to bottom, it wasn't hard to just either plug
mhm,
someone else in or plug myself in. So those were the things where they weren't the like me or the other person who was like placeholders just reading off the other actor. Like, we knew enough of the story to give the actor who was being recorded something to react off of. So that was just my first time because a lot of money went into it, and in the end it just felt like I was carelessly giving money away and it
mhm.
just didn't sit right with me. So that was my learning curve, and I was like, no matter what production I'm gonna do is gonna be thorough, and anyone who I bring on, I try to let know from jump. If you're down, if you're not, that's cool too. But I just want you to know what pace we're going at.
Respect, man. Are you self-funded when you come to this particular production?
Absolutely. Which makes me
Okay.
even more, this is what we got to do. Because I'm not even joking. I tell my actors, I'm like, look, when we get in the studio, we got 3 takes. You got the first take for me to correct you if I have to. We got the second take for you to get right. And we got the third take for safety. That is the overall vibe. But again, I feel like I can do that because I take the time to rehearse with all those actors. When they're in the booth, it's not the first time of me expressing or reminding them what's the character's goal in this particular scene. I think that makes such a huge difference because there were a lot of times during rehearsals when my actors they would come in and they would come with these different choices that were great, but it doesn't fit long run. Even beyond the season, what I've written, it doesn't fit with the character what have in my mind. So those rehearsals, I'm able to express and explain and give them more detail stuff that's not in the script that they were able to read. I don't want to have to do that on studio time where I'm paying for the studio and the audio engineer explaining to you why this isn't a good idea. Because then I also don't want to be the director that ever makes my actors feel like, A, you can't try anything, or B, rude and just shutting it down. So a lot of those rehearsals is not only getting the actors ready, but is just establishing some sort of connection with each other and making sure we're in lockstep.
Yeah, it's a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the decision is yours, and you're not privy to the world that's in my my brain at this
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
So let me help you.
Let me
And
help
that's
you. Because I
yeah,
want
yeah,
you to look good. I want you to sound your best. Trust me, I only win that way if you sound great. So I'm not going against you. So trust me. And that's been another rewarding thing, too. From season one to season two, I have a profound respect for all my cast. They're talented, or whatever. But I've seen even the level of trust, which I'm happy because I feel like I've earned it. Because when they record, they don't hear it until the end when I put the season out. So it's been nice kind of earning that trust. And I trust that when I send you the script, you're going to take a look at it. You're going to come to me with the rehearsals with decisions and choices. And there were times actor would make a choice and I'm like, damn, that actually works. And I would rewrite and incorporate why that person made that choice. So
hmm
it works both ways.
yeah. Wow, that's important, man. I appreciate that, and the fact that, like you said, you're working with professionals. They know what's up. It does make the difference. I respect that. I appreciate that, and I'm happy for you that you are working at that level because
Thank
it's
you.
important. It's a game changer. So your advice is that sound can make the listener's experience vivid without visuals. What are some specific techniques or tools you recommend for creators wanting to enhance their sound design?
I don't think there's any way you can enhance your sound design other than the story and the voice actors you put in. If you have a car explode, a car exploding is a car exploding. But when you have whoever the cast around there, if they have someone they love in said car explode or around the car explosion, that's when we get the height of it. I know there's like really elaborate sound design where people make things that I'm like, I don't even know how they came up with it, but it sounds really cool. But at the same time, it's the story itself that gets us there, that knows the stakes, what's happening, what this person will gain or lose when this happens. I can't think of any other way to enhance the sound design other than just the performances itself. It makes me really happy that the way things are in order because it's like in my mind, I'm like, all right, good script, get the actors. Got the actors, now I gotta get a good performance. Now I got the good performance. Now I can incorporate the sound design to just push that thing to the top. So that's where I look at it. Now, of
Mhm.
course, having bad sound design is just like having bad audio. But I'm talking about clean audio for sound design. I think the only way to heighten it is just the performances that you have in the
Yeah,
production.
yeah, I agree, man, for sure. What's one piece of advice you wish you had received when you first started creating audio dramas?
The sky's the limit. That probably would have been the thing. That's something that I didn't really take in account till the second season in my approach and what storylines I'm writing and such. So I think that would have been something I would have liked to know. But at the same time, though, I'm really happy with the way things happen because I'm also a believer in growing. I like
hmm
looking back and saying, man, I'm made progress. I may not be where I want to be, but I know I'm not where I was. I'm not mad I didn't know that. I think it happened organically the way that I learned.
It was your own journey.
It was my own journey, but that was something I would say is probably just like the most important thing that I've learned. coming from a field where everything was about visual aids. So that was like that turning point and made me quietly fall in love with the world of audio.
The dope part about audio is that it can become a cornerstone for other things. So you mentioned the visual aids. There can be a world drawn out that someone can create context around based on this cornerstone of audio, and
Absolutely.
so that's one of the many things I love about audio dramas, podcasting in general, is that this audio is that cornerstone content from which so many things can be built from.
You mean like
Um,
on different platforms and
yes,
such
on different platforms, into television,
into
you
television?
can create
Absolutely.
it beyond and beyond. It can become its comic book. It can become its visual on YouTube,
Absolutely.
and it can be all of these things,
And what better
illustrations.
way than to
Mhm.
have something where you can almost do anything?
Yes.
Because if you want to start at the base to potentially go somewhere, wouldn't you want to be able to give it your all at the base? And I feel like there isn't any other platform that can go with me self funding it where I'd be able to incorporate all these things. Like I would have had to compromise. Whatever comes down the line, I'm glad that this is the foundation because
Hmm.
then you're getting the full story, raw and as it is.
Yep, yep, yep. I love that, man. That's dope. So, what's been some of the most surprising things that you learned about yourself as a creator through Visionaries audio drama?
This project definitely required me to be my most resilient self because I had to do so many different roles. And it gave me, just as a storyteller, the confidence. At the end of the day, this is just me. People are rocking with it. So I think it gave the confidence as a storyteller because things that I have written that I thought was great before, whether it be for a feature film or TV series, it was just the script, unless I was producing it, and that was mostly independent films. But TV series, I pushed it out there. I tried the best I can. I got feedback, but its life only existed on the page. This is
Hmm.
something that went from page to something you can listen to. And I think even that itself, as any creative, is like when you have a story in your mind, putting it on page is an accomplishment. Because I know there's some people who are writers, and that's dope, that's cool. I think for me, it's what I had in my mind, and this is what people are listening to or responding to. It's a pretty cool thing. So that has made me feel a lot more fulfilled as a storyteller because that's what I want to do. And I want to tell entertaining stories, and I want people to go on this journey that I'm trying to guide them.
That's great, man. As a creative, I get it. I resonate with that so much. So, with 2 seasons of Visionaries complete, what's next for you and the series? I know you said you're writing this third season right now.
Yeah,
Um, please tell us about the third season. But are there any other projects that you're starting to think about?
for me at least, what has come the cost of doing a little bit of everything from producing and me seeing the momentum with the story, that's become my life. It goes from writing, producing it, editing it, putting it out there, started from scratch, writing the new season. We're getting new characters, assuming a lot of the cast can come back because life happens. But if they all can come back, there's still new characters that I'd have to audition and try to bring into the fold. So, like, even with season two, I believe we had 26 actors, including myself. I'm nearly done, but I think we're at maybe 37 actors. So just maintaining all these characters, and each of these characters have its own storylines. I wanted it to feel very, I don't know if you ever watched Game of Thrones,
Hmm.
but you know how we all thought, oh man, Ned's the lead, and then he got his head chopped off. We're like, all right, Ned ain't it. But there's so many different characters, and they had their own storylines. That's the same thing I wanted to do. So even writing it, it's not just your protagonist, antagonist, and like characters around them pushing them forward. Everyone literally has their own storyline and how they're driving and what decisions, why they're making decisions they made. So that has been my focus for the last few years. And also, as you said before, and you were able to call out, I do want to put my best foot forward. That has taken my 100% attention. That I am excited to share that it's season three. Hopefully, we'll be able to get in production soon and get that out there.
By the number of actors, it's you without you telling on yourself that you're from television. That would be telling on yourself because uh, just to think for me, that blew my mind. For me and my approach, and even when I work with clients, I'm like, listen, it don't need to be more than five because we need to be able to know who's who.
Right,
Like I can't, you about to make my head explode. But
right.
now I'm curious about this, and I know you're executing it, and there's more than one way to do everything. So how do you support? And of course this is dialogues, of course this is making sure that we're calling out names and people know who's in scene at the time.
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
A lot of planning. Like I have my whiteboard and it looks like a web if you see it. I'm making sure I write down every character's name and trying to keep track of when did they appear, when was the last time they were in a scene. Even I forget, and I'm like, oh man, I forgot this character in episode 2 and it's episode 5. A lot of that happens once I finish writing. Like I finish it and I'm like, all right, now is the point where I just have to polish it up. I look at that board and I'm seeing where all the characters are and keeping account of how many, when was the last time they appeared. And sometimes I have to go back and I'm like, this character is not doing enough. Like maybe I need to incorporate more things. Every character that's in there, at least for the most part, I want them to feel like they have to be in the story and just not someone who's just pushing it along. That's its own thing in the outlining and in the writing process. It's just looking at the board and putting it all together. And once I have it all together, then I'm able to go to my actors and feel confident when I go to them and explaining every scene and how it works out. But yeah, a lot of it is a lot of planning. For me, it felt a little bit like a cheat code because even when I'm writing season 3, I have these new characters who are coming up and the world's established. We know the rules of the world, we know the other characters. The whole thing is around this rebellion. So we know what's the main core of the story, but it's fun trying to determine which side they're on. Are they for or against the rebellion? And then why are they for and against it? And it just can't be I'm for it because they're against my people. Like what's the real reason? Is it your loved one was hurt? Is it gonna mess up your profits? What is the reason that you are choosing to pick this side? And I think that's what makes it easy juggling so many people. It's just giving them their attentions and making it life or death. Not literally doesn't mean like they'll die at the end of the season, but just putting the stakes up that high forces me to know that's not a good enough reason. I need to know why you want to support or go against this rebellion and what are your personal interests. So it always feels like even though I'm writing something in the third season that's progressing, it always feels really new when I'm introducing these new characters. Then I'm coming up, well, why do I want this new character in? What do they do for the story? How do they add to the story?
Wow. It sounds like you having fun. I'm sure it's has its own, takes its
Yeah,
toll.
it takes
But
its toll. There's some good
yeah,
days. There's some days where I'm just like, and I'm staring at the screen. I can't figure it out. But when it all comes together, it's such a rewarding thing. And I take pride in if I can put any listener in there, when I get we were talking about the reviews or people just telling me I love all the different storylines, that's a good feeling because that's what I'm here to storytell. And I
yeah,
want to give you the best story I can to my ability.
that's cool, man. So I got just a few more questions for you,
Yes,
and we're gonna
please.
close up, man. But how do you see the audio drama medium evolving, and what role do you want to play in shaping its future?
I believe we are going to see a surge, and there's definitely a spotlight on it. And I think we're getting to the point where this can be, I don't want to say rival TV because everything's its own thing, but I do think it's garnering the respect of being a form of entertainment that you treat as if you were watching your favorite show on TV. I'll admit, when I first did it and I was telling people, were just like, what's an audio drama? And there were a lot of times I had to explain because then if I'd be like, oh, I have a podcast. Oh, who do you interview? I'm like, it's an audio drama. And I've noticed there's been a little more respect coming towards the craft. And that's what any artist want. They want respect for their craft and the time that goes in, the effort that goes in. So I think the more spotlight that goes in, the more opportunities there will be. Even with these award ceremonies I've taken part of, a lot of them didn't even have a podcast category to submit for certain awards. And now I'm like, wow, they have it now. So it makes me feel like it is getting the recognition and people are starting to put it out in the open.
Yeah, it is definitely changing. As I mentioned in when I started in 2017 and being one of the few black creators in the space, There wasn't a market for it. There wasn't attention on it, and there were creators doing it. They just didn't look like us.
Right.
Um, and even the actors, again, it's been a carryover in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. Things have shifted in really great ways, and with Black audio dramas exist coming up, that was what Afros in Audio was working towards in 2017. And so I'm so grateful and glad to see that now it's a thing. Like now we're creating in
Hmm.
this space, and how can we get more creators in this space? How can we get more folks who are waiting for their big opportunity in film or TV to say, hey, why don't you come over here for a minute and play in this playground because it's viable?
Yeah, it's viable. And what I would tell people too is you have a, I don't want to say a better chance because I can't predict anything, but instead of waiting, it feels like you're being active because you're like, I'm gonna produce this, and it's reasonable. It can happen. It is not the same burden from a cost perspective as it would be if you were doing a film. I'm not saying that needs to be the only reason to do it, but I got to a point when I was writing scripts where I'm like, I'm tired of writing these things, and then that's as far as it goes. Of it just being the collection of pages I have on my desk. I want to do something. I want to test it out myself. I don't want to hear that someone who is reading is saying, I don't know if this works. I believe it works, and I want to do it. So that would be my call to anyone if they're ever thinking, man, I have this idea, especially if it's something that's far beyond your means of actually being able to produce it. This is a great place where you can still hold on to that and do it the way you want to do it because sound and how you can create these vivid images without using visual aids.
Yeah, and you greenlight your own opportunity.
And into what you were saying, people are always asking, "What are you doing? What are you working on?" And sure, you can keep writing different things, but for me, I want to actually say, "This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm working on. This is what I have." Listen to it in its full glory, not pages on the script where you can interpret the dialogue the way you do or the way you hear it in your head is different than the voices I have in my head. I want you to hear it in its full guts and glory.
Hmm. Man, that's what's up. If you could describe the legacy you want Visionaries Audio Drama to leave in one sentence, what would it be?
I would want Visionaries to be the most visual audio that's ever existed. I want people to live in that world and see it and feel it in every way, no different, or maybe even more than they would being in a theater. That's what I want.
That's profound. That gave me chills. I love that. I
I,
respect that,
I
man.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's real. Okay, I love that.
I
So
appreciate it. Thank you.
lastly, for sure, how can listeners and aspiring creators best support your work and other independent audio dramas?
Give it a listen, give it a shot, leave, rate, review some of these shows, whether they're doing crowdfunding campaigns or they have Patreon, support it because while I'm happy the way it's growing, it still has ways to grow, even with receiving funding. If there's any way you can support, especially if you like the show and you're with it, please give it a support in any way that you can because when we're all putting it out there all on our dime. So support if you can, but the biggest support is listening to it, rate it, review it, and just share your thoughts. Let us know how you're feeling. That
Yeah,
encouraged me to go the way I wanted to go with the second season. Shout out to everyone who rated and gave a review because that was a big part in my growth as a story teller.
nice, nice. All right, man. I so appreciate this conversation with you
My
today.
pleasure. Thank you
Yeah,
for the space. I really appreciate it. It's always nice to just, especially with, I get that you're creative and it made it very easy just going back and forth. So great questions. And I appreciate you putting a spotlight on Visionaries Audio Drama. Thank you for that.
for sure. Thank you, man. I feel like I haven't done my audio drama since 2017. And so every time I have one of these conversations, it's inspiring. It motivates me and it makes me think maybe I need to pick up the pen again. And listening to who you are as a person, the integrity you bring to the space, the competence, the excellence, and the desire to do great work, I am very appreciative of that.
Thank you, brother.
And grateful for this conversation for sure, man. So as we wrap this up, I want you to do two things for me. If
Yeah.
there is anything that we haven't talked about that you are wanting to promote, if you're wanting to get support, like very direct, throw that out there. Shout out to the team, shout out to the cast members, and then of course tell people where they can listen and where they can find you.
Yeah, so right now, the biggest support I can ask for is give it a listen. Check it out. Visionaries Audio Drama is a fantasy series. It deals with the concept of human evolution, and those who evolve awaken like superhuman abilities in their eyes. So they have colorful eyes, but it's selective. So not everyone evolves. So whoever does not evolve is now enslaved by the visionaries. They're called the Dead Eye Slaves. So we're following the Dead Eye Slaves rebel. So it's a really story that can pull a lot from today. A lot of the focus was it's tailored to the main discriminations that's in this world. And it feels like a little thriller-esque, very like political drama. You'll definitely be in for a ride. So please give it a listen. And as I mentioned, rate, leave a comment that helps the creators know exactly what they're doing because ultimately we're doing these stories for you. So please let us know your feedback. And you can find Visionaries Audio Drama wherever you get your podcasts. You can go on the website if you want to know a little bit more who the cast is. I have an about the whole process, like a short interview. So that's visionariesaudiodrama.com. You can check out on Instagram. We're at Visionaries Audio Drama. On X, we're at Visionaries AD. And yeah, give us a follow, share your thoughts. And me speaking for the cast, we hope that you can go on the ride and follow the rebellion.
Great. I'm looking forward to it, man. I can't wait to get off this with you so I can push play.
Yeah, I appreciate it,
For
brother.
sure.
Thank you very much.
For sure, man. So thank you so much, Richard.
My pleasure, man.